Hi everyone, welcome to our very first episode of College Chats. We're so excited to kick things off with a special guest today. Woo, Maggie from Boston College, and we're super honored to have her here today to share her experiences, insights, and advice about college life, applications, and more. So let's get started.
Okay, hi everyone. My name's Maggie, and this is the first college chat of She Builds the Future. I'm super excited to be here, and I'm super excited that you guys asked me. If you have any questions ever, I've left my email at the end of the presentation. Feel free to email me at any time. I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have. So this is just a little bit of an overview about what I plan to talk about. First, just a bit about me, a bit about my high school experience and college applications, as well as college and research and career, and maybe questions at the end if we have time for any. So to give you guys a little bit of an overview about me, I grew up in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and these are a few photos from when I was younger, so you guys have a gist about who I am. I have a younger brother named Daniel and a dog named Charlie, who you may hear barking sometime throughout this presentation. Um, I've always loved playing sports, mainly softball and basketball, but I also really like arts, reading, drawing, painting, and I was always obsessed with science. Actually, I have a photo that I don't look my best in, but it's from my middle school science fair, as you can see there. And I have a Bachelor of Science degree in chemistry from Boston College. I graduated high school in 2020 during COVID, and then I graduated from BC just last May. So I graduated with a degree in chemistry, and I also minored in philosophy. And I'm currently in a chemistry PhD program, also at BC. And I've been living in Boston since the summer after my sophomore year. So since 2021, about 4 years now. So to give you a gist of my high school experience, I still loved science. I have a photo of my titration there from one of my chemistry labs. But I went to a different high school than most of my closest friends from my grade school, which was kind of a little bit of a harder experience. I went to a bigger high school. My grade school was only about 30 people, and my high school was about 160, which isn't too big, but it was much bigger than 160 per class. So it was much bigger than I was used to. But I met a lot of my really good friends through sports and activities, such as basketball, as you can see there. And that was something I wanted to take with me through college. I would wanted to still be involved in clubs and sports any way I could. Obviously, I was not going to be a D1 basketball player. I was not that good, but I found ways to get involved with that at BC. So during my junior year of high school, I started to get a little bit more interested in science in a serious way because I knew I was going to be heading to college in the next 2 years. And I decided to take AP chemistry. My school had a few APs that we could take junior and senior year, and chemistry was one of the options for junior year. So I decided that I would do that. And I ended up really loving it. And actually, my lab partner that you can see with my titration, she ended up being one of my best friends and my college roommate, actually. So that was really fun. And then I also decided to take AP Physics during my senior year. That was one of the senior year opportunities that we had. It wasn't really my favorite. The photo that's on the bottom right with lab coats, that was our rocket launcher day, which was fun. I enjoyed that. But in general, I wasn't really into physics as much. I didn't love the math part of it. I'm not as big on math as I am just on more of the biology side of science, chemistry as well. So but I knew that I liked science mostly in general, except for physics, but I loved being in labs, not so much physics, which is okay. And then throughout high school, I was excited to be applying to college, but I didn't really have anyone that I could maybe ask questions to. I didn't have an older sibling. I only have my younger brother, and all of my cousins, most of them had decided what they were going to do, basically had no deliberation. They kind of just knew what they wanted to do. So I didn't really have anybody that I could be asking questions to about where maybe I should apply to school or what I should be putting on my applications or college essays. None of that. So I was kind of getting my information through my friends and their older siblings, which was super helpful, but maybe not always the easiest way to get information. And I did have a lot of help from my guidance counselors. They were super helpful in that journey, and I was really lucky to have really great counselors and teachers that were writing me recommendation letters, but also had been through the process so many times because they had all either had kids or already helped so many students. So they were super nice and helpful as well. And speaking of, here are a few of my college applications tips, things that I learned along the way. Um, because I did have a few little hiccups, which you will see. Um, so I made very last minute plans to visit schools. I kind of panicked during the summer before my senior year, and I was like, oh, I forgot I need to be visiting schools. And then I planned all of my trips for the fall of my senior year, which is a pretty busy time, especially if you play sports during that time.
Mm,
Um, so that was something that I definitely wish I did a little bit differently. If you can and you plan to visit schools, the summer before your senior year might be a good time to start thinking about that, which I waited definitely a little bit too long, which is okay too, of course, it turned out fine. But if you can and you want to, visiting schools during the summer, if you're going to be busy in the fall, or if you can go during a semester, I do think it's important to see a campus when students are there. I feel like that's the best way to get a feel for a college campus. But of course, your schedules, I'm sure, are all jam-packed. So it's really what's best for you is what you should do. So then when you're applying to college, you can apply regular decision. Some schools have early action, which is just a non-committal early application. BC does not have that. BC has early decision 1 and early decision 2. So I applied early decision 2 to BC, which is basically if you get in, you are committed to going there. And I changed my application actually. I applied regular decision, and then right before the deadline, I changed my application to early decision because I knew that BC was where I wanted to be. But at first, I wasn't really ready to make that commitment. And then literally, I think probably at 11:59, the day of the deadline, I switched my application to early decision, which my mom was not too happy about, that I waited that long. She was happy that I committed to BC, but so I originally applied to about 8 other schools, I think. I actually don't even remember. I was going back through my old emails and I was like, oh, I don't even remember applying to that school. And I'm sure I spent a lot of time on the applications, but I knew I wanted to be at BC, so I did change my application and eventually applied early decision 2. I think a lot of other schools also have rolling admissions, so you can apply, I think, as early as the very early fall of your senior year. And then you could know if that's the school you want to go to, you'll know um, pretty early on whether or not you got
mhm,
in, and then you can just have that decision done, which is great, I think, if that's a school that you want to go to, which I think, for example, I think the University of Pittsburgh does that, um, but BC didn't. So I waited for early decision 2, applied early decision 2, and I was also a pretty big procrastinator, which was a big problem for me in high school, especially. I waited until the very last minute to start my applications. I remember my mom just getting on me about applying and sending all those in. And it was just like a problem for me. I don't know what it was. I should have just done it as early as possible and gotten out of the way. I think, I don't know. I don't know if I didn't want to write the essays, but if you have an idea of the schools that you'll be applying to and looking into those application requirements as early as possible, I think is a great thing to do. It'll definitely alleviate some of the stress you're feeling about that because I know college applications can be extremely stressful and they were for me. So I definitely get it. Um,
mhm,
yeah, so definitely I think getting an early start on those and maybe hopefully that'll alleviate some of the stress. I don't know because I didn't do it early. I wish I did, but that would be my honestly main piece of advice for college applications. And then here is another another few things that I did. I did wait until very late to finalize what I was writing about for my personal statement, and I did not have anybody look it over, which I also do not recommend. Um, if you can start to brainstorm a personal statement as early as possible, I think that would be great. Um, it should be fun, and it wasn't for me because I waited for so long. Um,
mhm,
and it doesn't have to be too long. I think it's usually about 2 pages is what I would assume. Um, but you can it's an opportunity to be creative, and especially if you like writing, I think it's a really great chance to show off something that's unique about you. Um, I don't even remember what I wrote mine about, but I think having somebody look it over probably would have been ideal. Um,
Oh, you
which
end up
is
at BC. That means
I
you're
did end
ready.
up at BC.
Mhm.
Yes, but
But that's a
I
win.
wish I had waited. It was a win. I was very happy when I got into BC, which it probably was a blessing because I waited for so long. But um, also, supplemental essays is the thing that some schools will well, in my opinion, sneak in. They did not sneak them in. I just waited for so long to apply that I didn't know they had supplemental essays. Um, but supplemental essays is another good opportunity, I think, to showcase something about you, especially if you like writing, as I said before. Yeah, so I think having people look them over, getting an early start, all great things to do. And then finally, apply to, if this is something that you're interested in, applying to scholarships is a very great opportunity to receive financial help with college. And that was something I did. And that was something I did honestly get a head start on because my mom was so on top of those things after my college application debacle. Um, so I did apply to a bunch of scholarships and they were super helpful for me in terms of financial aid because different schools do things differently with financial aid. Some are merit-based, some are need-based. So I went through Scholarship America and I looked at which scholarships I was eligible for. And I found a lot of great opportunities and you're not gonna get all of them, or maybe you will, but it still doesn't hurt, but you may need letters of recommendation for those. So something to keep in mind when you're looking to apply both to college and to scholarships. So now on to why I chose Boston College. The first thing that was pretty important to me was school size. I knew that I kind of wanted to go to a school on the larger side, but I wanted to also have the opportunity to keep classes pretty small. So BC was about the right size for me. I went to a few smaller schools. I didn't really visit any schools larger than BC because I knew I didn't want to be at a huge school, but that was the first kind of criteria that I was looking for. And then location, I knew that I loved Boston. I had visited Boston when I was going into high school, and I loved the city. I just absolutely adored it. I liked that it felt, to me, it felt great. Like it felt, everything felt comfortable. And it's about a 4.5 hour drive from my house. So that kind of felt like the right location for me. Um, in hindsight, sometimes I wish I was a little bit closer just to my family, but
Mm.
I do think it was the right distance. I definitely love Boston. I don't regret going to BC at all. It felt like a manageable distance for me. I wasn't looking to fly. If I liked that I could drive if I needed to. So those are all things to consider, I think, when looking at schools. And as well as sporting and other events, it may seem silly, as I said on my slide, but I always loved the idea of going to college football games. Um, and at BC, hockey's really big, and I didn't never really like experienced a hockey game, so I was excited about that. And schools have a bunch of different traditions. At BC, we have Marathon Monday for the Boston Marathon and the Red Bandana football game. Those are all really big events at BC, which I was excited to do. And all schools have their own type of events like that, like Marathon Mondays and Red Bandana games. And obviously, other schools have football teams, things like that. But it was something that I wanted as part of my college experience, which may seem a little bit silly, but it was important to me. Um, and then I did actually tour BC. It was one of the 4 college campuses that I toured. And I just knew when I stepped on the campus that I liked it, and my mom liked it too. And it was the only school that we both agreed that we both liked. So, um, and her opinion was kind of important to me as well. So I knew she felt safe with me going there. I felt safe with me going there. It just felt right, basically. And I think hopefully if you have the opportunity to visit a campus, that's honestly the key. It's just that you feel comfortable and you feel at home. It's really important. And then talking to students and alumni, I had a teacher in high school that had attended BC, and he was like a walking advertisement for the college. He, I think, had about, I think probably 4 kids from, five kids from my college class went to BC. Um,
Mm.
which is a pretty decent amount for a class of like 160, I would say. Um, I went to a Jesuit high school, so it wasn't that uncommon that that many students would also be going to a Jesuit college. Um, but I had never heard anybody say anything. They had a negative experience. I only heard good things.
Mm.
Um, so that obviously helped as well. And then the last thing, I touched on it a little bit, and I was talking about scholarships, is the financial aid. BC is a school that does do need-based financial aid instead of merit, which was helpful for me because obviously college is very expensive. And if that is a part of your situation, then that is definitely something to look into with schools as well. So here are a few of the photos from my academic journey at BC. So as I said, I graduated during COVID, as you can see my mask in my lab photo, um, which was definitely an interesting experience. We would basically go into labs every other week as opposed to every week how it would be normally. So it was definitely a little interesting, but it all turned out for the best. So I can't complain. Um, so basically, when I enrolled at BC, I was planning on studying biochem, and I actually was completed the pre-dental track, which is funny. I graduated pre-dental, which I didn't know until after I graduated. Um, but after my freshman year, I decided to change my major to chemistry, and that was mostly because most of my classes were online, and I was having kind of a hard time understanding biology online. So I decided just to drop the biology and just stick to chemistry, which maybe wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for COVID, but everything happens for a reason, so it was okay. Um, and after spending a ton of time in my organic chemistry professor's office with just endless amounts of questions with organic chemistry, I asked her if she would be my academic advisor, um, which turned out to be kind of a pivotal moment in my academic career, I would say. She was a great mentor to me, and she helped me get connected with a lot of other of her students previously, which was super, super helpful in terms of career planning and in terms of just academic questions, graduate school. She got me in contact with so many great people, and she stayed in my life until actually till this day because I still see her around at BC. So she was super, super helpful to me. And especially when I was planning to study abroad, which I was very fortunate to be able to do. I was able to go with her with basically anything in terms of course planning, because that is a huge part of going abroad, especially as a STEM major, making sure you're able to meet all of your requirements without having to extend graduation. That was something I wanted to do. So she was super, super helpful in terms of getting all those things completed and making sure I had everything checked off. And then I also worked part-time as a lab assistant for undergraduate teaching labs, which was kind of a way just to get my foot in the door of getting involved in research. But it also helped me gain a little bit of confidence in terms of just being in lab, because in high school we had chemistry labs, but they weren't anything like too extreme. And I was also like a super anxious person in lab because I didn't want to mess anything up. So
Yeah.
it's definitely, I think, a universal experience, especially when it's something so new. So yeah, that was a really great experience, I thought, and it was just like very simple. I think I only worked like 20 hours a week. So I actually did have a lot of downtime, and it maybe wasn't the most exciting of the opportunities, but um, it was just a way to kind of get familiar, because I do think it can be a little bit of a scary
Mm.
getting in labs. So, but eventually I did get involved in research. So while I was abroad, I reached out to a few professors at BC who I knew had labs that were accepting undergraduate students. And one of my professors from the fall of my junior year had just joined BC as a faculty member and was opening his lab in the spring while I was abroad. And he had a physical chemistry lab that was mostly dealing with lithium ion batteries, and I actually don't even remember what the other half of the lab did. It was like, oh, electrocatalysis, which I don't really know what that is, but I was more on the battery side of things, so that was kind of my shtick. Um, but he agreed to meet with me over Zoom, and we began to discuss just basically what I wanted to do post BC, if I wanted to stay in research, if I was actually interested in physical chemistry, which I didn't really know at the time. I knew I had been interested in batteries, and I enjoyed his class. So he allowed me to join his lab, which was super, super nice. But his lab had just started, so there wasn't really any graduate students to be my mentor. At the time, there were only 3, and they were also just starting out in graduate school as well. And now that I have just started in graduate school, I definitely would not be in the position to take on an undergraduate mentor because I'm kind of still getting my bearings. So I completely understand. Um, but it was definitely a difficult learning curve. And I think, as I said before, just starting in lab in general can give you a little bit of anxiety. And for me, it was starting in lab with batteries, which I didn't really know anything about. And I would try to read papers and I would get super overwhelmed. Um, but as time went on, I got a lot more comfortable talking to the graduate students, asking them for help, as well as reading papers. It became something that I looked forward to doing instead of something that I felt like I had to do, which was
Mhm.
super, super great, especially moving into, I knew that I long term maybe wouldn't want to be working in physical chemistry, as I had that kind of more interest in biology. Um, but it was something that motivated me to apply to graduate school because I knew that I liked doing the research aspect of it. More people joined the lab. It became a lot easier to talk to people, to get people's opinions on what I should be doing. And I actually ended up staying in that lab until after I graduated. So I stayed there the entire summer after I graduated from BC, which was really fun. I ended up really loving that experience, and maybe it wasn't exactly what I wanted to be doing in terms of subject, but it gave me a lot of great opportunities. So I was super happy I got involved in that and met all those people. It was really worked out for the best, I would say.
Yeah, I can tell this is a really valuable experience for you.
It definitely was. It
From
definitely is what made me
Mhm.
want to go to graduate school,
Mm,
because I maybe didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I actually
mhm.
was planning on waiting a year to apply to graduate school. And my boss, his name is Alexi, he said to me, he's like, well, what are you going to wait for? Like, why are you waiting? And I was like, honestly, I don't know. That's a good point. um, so when he agreed to write my letter of recommendations, I also had to tell him that I wanted to do chemical biology instead of physical chemistry, which I think took him as kind of, it was a surprise. But
Mm,
um, but even though it wasn't what I exactly wanted to be doing, in general, it was like I just knew that I enjoyed doing the research part of it.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, I think really any type of research just to kind of get your feet wet um, is a good experience. All experience is a good experience in terms of, well, maybe that's not true, but um, in terms of research, anything I could get, I was like happy to take. So it definitely
Mhm.
turned out for the best. Okay. So general college advice for studying and time management. So as you saw with my the college applications, um, my procrastination was definitely at an all-time high when I was in high school. Um, so that became something I wanted to kind of focus on in college. And I definitely was able to, especially with being in lockdown. And I want to say lockdown, but we had a lot of online classes and really could not hang out in big groups my freshman year. So I kind of had a lot of time to focus on school, um, which kind of set the tone for the rest of my college experience, which worked out for me. And school was always my top priority, but I also did value spending time with my friends and enjoying my college experience because I only had 4 years of it. So I did want to make the most of it. Um, but that was my motivating factor for getting everything done, was that I didn't want to miss out on anything. If I could be having fun, I wanted to be with my friends, I had to make sure I got my schoolwork done. Um, so that became kind of my priority when I was a freshman, was finding my group with studying, because college classes are definitely different from high school classes. So I had to shake my studying habits up a bit. I began to go to study rooms by myself, and I would write everything out on whiteboards. Especially with chemistry, it can be hard, and I think I'm definitely more of a visual person. I like writing things down, and seeing things in front of me as well as saying them out loud. I thought was really helpful. So getting those studying rooms was really, really helpful for me. And it did take a little bit to get that kind of into those habits, but eventually everybody will find what works for them. Um, and then attending office hours, this was something I was actually super scared to do when I was a freshman. I didn't really know how it worked, um, because we did not have them in my high school. I don't know if some high schools do have them, but basically for office hours, you just kind of show up. It's a professor's like free hour, basically, a professor or a teaching assistant. So you show up, you ask whatever questions you may have, they'll answer them. And it's basically just a free time to just kind of talk with your professors about any questions you may have. I was super scared of utilizing that time, especially during my early college years. I kind of felt like I was maybe wasting people's time if it was a stupid question. And I quickly learned like there are no stupid questions. Like often, especially in STEM, like people have the exact same questions as you. Um, so it took me kind of a long time to learn that. And that was something I wish I had learned earlier, especially in general chemistry, organic chemistry. Those were tough classes for me. And I wish I kind of utilized that time more instead of just kind of trying to figure everything out on my own. And everybody was always super nice when I would ask them questions, especially in teaching assistants. Um, so that was something I wish I utilized a little bit more. especially my first few years. Um, and making friends in your classes as well as labs is super, super, one, it makes everything more fun to know the people around you. But two, it's super helpful because, as I said, everybody has the same questions. Talking things out with people is the best way to learn, in my opinion. And it never hurts to have a friend in your class. And it just makes it more enjoyable, in my opinion, as well. So in terms of academic, career, and personal development, many schools will have resources. I'm highlighting things specifically at BC, but most schools will have something along these lines. So we have a career center that was super helpful for me in resume building as well as interview guidance. It wasn't something I was super familiar with, but learning how to build a resume and what to put on there, how to word things, super important in terms of graduate school, in terms of jobs after college. We have a family learning center that was helpful for tutoring and exam help, as well as academic advising. At BC, you were assigned an academic advisor your freshman year, and then it changed to somebody a little bit more specific to your major during your sophomore year. And as I said before, I asked specifically for mine, and she said yes, so I was able to have her as my academic advisor, which was super helpful. And we also have a pre-health department, which if that's something you're interested in, I'm sure most schools will have something along those lines, people to help you in terms of applying to medical school, like what you need for that as well as counseling services. And we have the Murray Center for Student Wellness at BC, both available to students in case you need them.
Mhm.
So here are a few photos from, I think most of them are from my sophomore year, because I would think I was so excited after COVID to kind of just get back into the swing of things and really experience college. So these are a few photos from that. And this is something I highlighted kind of in my first few slides about how clubs and sports was pretty important to me in high school. And I didn't really know what that would look like for me in college. But it's kind of just about putting yourself out there. I think I was pretty shy moving into college, which is totally okay, and it worked out okay. But I kind of wish I had gotten involved in things a little bit earlier. I think I waited mostly until my sophomore and junior years, and I think I kind of maybe missed out a few opportunities of meeting people. But at my college, and I'm sure most colleges will have an activities fair where you can walk around and see kind of what clubs there are to offer. If there are sport teams that you want to get involved with, that as well. I played a lot of intramural sports with my friends, which I thought was a really fun opportunity. We were able to play, I think we played basketball, volleyball. The one you're seeing there, it's called volleyball. You basically play volleyball in a racquetball room, which was super fun. So at BC, here's a few of those opportunities for volunteering. You have all of these groups. There's writing, like newspapers, if that's something you're interested in. If you're interested in sports, we had, as I said, the intramural sports as well as club teams. And there's dance groups, comedy groups, STEM, which is a few of the things I highlighted here, and so many more. If you're interested in theater, music, art, activism, student government, there's so many things to get involved with in college and so many opportunities that you can take. And I highly recommend talking to as many people as possible, getting involved in as many things as you can without spreading yourself too thin, which is also important. Yeah, definitely all of those things are super fun and great ways to meet people, which I think is the best part of college. You're all kind of in the same place, in the same space of your life, which is definitely something I miss. And it's a great community, in my opinion. It's a great place. Oh, I just miss it so much. Talking about it like makes me sad. Yeah, but there's so many ways to get involved, so many ways to meet new people. Yeah. So just some final advice with college. Here are some of my friends that I met through different things. As I said before, getting involved in as many things as you can without spreading yourself too thin is super, super important. You still want to have time and be able to make time for the things that you want to do. So keeping a good balance with school, as well as extracurriculars, managing your friends and social life, finding that balance, it may take a little bit of time, but that was one thing I found to be super valuable when I was navigating my college experience. And the next thing was one of the hardest lessons I had to learn in college.
And high school.
Especially in STEM and high school, definitely in high school too. A bad grade is not the end of the world. My mom had just told me this so many times when I would call her and just say that I was failing all my classes, which is not true. It just felt like it at the time. um, and especially STEM classes in college, a lot of them operate on a curve, which basically means your grade is only important relative to the average, which is a very hard thing to learn and a hard thing to wrap your mind around, especially when it's your first time going through it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and even if you end up with a bad grade in a class, which I definitely did, and not even bad, just not what I wanted, it's totally okay. And it will be okay. It's not a measure of your intelligence if you get one bad grade, which was definitely a challenge and maybe hard, and probably still is hard. If I was to look back on it now and take a test now and did not do good, I'm sure it would not be fun for me. But it's totally okay. Not the end of the world. Um, and on that note, it's okay to ask for help if you feel that you're struggling in any classes. Um, as I said before, going to a TA, going to a professor, totally okay. I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you navigate that. Um, and they'll give you advice straight up on what's best for you. If you need to withdraw from the class, they'll tell you that. They'll tell you, most college professors are very, very kind and will give you good advice if you go to them and ask. Um, but it can definitely be hard. And as I was saying before, it was hard for me to learn that asking for help was okay, that getting a bad grade was okay, if it was just every once in a while. So, and as I've kind of been highlighting through all of this, I think talking to as many people as you can is the most beneficial part of college. Um, for me, at least, I loved having a community of people when we were all kind of in similar points in our lives. And not everybody was doing the same thing, which made it super fun. Um, I loved that about my friends. None of us were really in the same kind of field, which I loved. I thought it was so fun to like hear about what everybody was doing, what everybody was doing in their classes, what they're doing in their clubs. I thought that was so fun. Um, so building those relationships, meeting as many people as you can, it's such a great opportunity to do all those things. And I mentioned it briefly before, but I wanted to touch on it a little bit too here. So I was able to study abroad in Dublin, Ireland in 2023 for a whole semester, it was the best experience, one of the best parts of my college time. Financially, this was possible due to BC's internal program at Trinity College, which is in Dublin. My financial aid package allowed me to do this, which is something I didn't know about BC going in. So if this is something you're interested in, it could be something to look at for schools that you're applying to, how their study abroad programs work. Especially as a STEM major, this can be kind of hard because you need to have certain requirements, and maybe some classes are only offered in the spring or only offered in the fall, which was the case with me. I ended up taking a lot of really hard classes my senior spring, which I did not want to do. But it was the way it worked out, and that's okay. It all turned out for the best. So, but planning as early as possible if this is something you're interested in, as I said, basically with everything, getting an early start is definitely the move. And I actually took one chemistry class when I was at Trinity in Dublin, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was very lucky because it got me out of one of my spring requirements during my senior year,
Mm-hmm.
but it was challenging. All of my grade was one test that I took at the very end,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
which is hard. But it turned out fine. It all worked out.
Was the
And it was a
class
great
taught in
experience.
English?
It was taught in English, but it was taught by professors who had a pretty thick Irish accent, and they were saying words that I had never heard of because I think I was maybe I was in the wrong class. I maybe was told that it met a requirement that maybe it shouldn't have. And so I was definitely a little behind, but it turned out fine. So I
Yeah.
was lucky there. But I remember everybody in my class, like they had all been classmates, I think all of their college experience. So it was just like me and all those people, and they were all super nice to me. Um, but it was just funny, like they helped me a lot. But it was definitely interesting taking a
Mm,
chemistry class at a
yeah.
different school. But overall, the experience was incredible, one I'll never forget in my life. It was really great. And again, that was possible due to BC's financial program there. Um, And yeah, I think if that's something you're interested in, it's definitely something worth looking into for schools. So one of the last things I wanted to talk about was just my experience at Dana-Farber. This was a program that I did just this past summer. Um, so as I was going into my graduate school, as I said, I'm a grad student at BC now. Um, I knew that I wanted to study chemical biology, but I was kind of interested to see the patient-facing side of scientific research, especially with cancer. I was always very interested in kind of that aspect of it. So I applied to the clinical research pipeline program at Dana-Farber, which I found on Indeed. So Indeed is kind of like LinkedIn, which I'm sure you've heard of. Um, but Indeed was provided through BC. So it was one of the things through the Career Center, which I'm sure different schools will have different things like this, but Indeed was just what BC used. And it basically, you add a profile, you add your resume, things like that, and it'll come up with job opportunities that they think you should look at and apply to. Um, so I found this on Indeed, and I was super interested in doing it. I knew I wanted to stay in Boston the summer between graduating and starting my graduate program, so I figured
Mhm.
this could be a cool way to do it. So this is what I did through that summer. I applied through Indeed and I found out I got it. And then I rotated through a bunch of different of the departments at Dana-Farber. So just a few that we did were the immunology and virology, Office of Human Research Studies, and thoracic oncology. So this was a super cool experience. It was kind of a way to just see how clinical research worked, which I wasn't really familiar with at all. I had kind of just
Mm.
done like wet lab things before, and I didn't really know anything about the clinical research side of it. So um, basically, we were able to meet with patients. It was a super cool experience. There was me and I think 9 others from different schools, mostly around Boston, I would say. Um, but definitely a cool experience. And if you're looking to do something like this, even throughout undergrad, there are many labs, especially in Boston, because Boston is so medical focused, that will have internship opportunities like this. One of my roommates actually works at Mass General, and I know that her lab takes undergraduate students as well as, I believe, high school students to do clinical research internships like this if you're looking to get into that. And this is a common pathway for people to get into graduate school, I know. If you're not planning to go immediately from undergraduate to graduate, people will do an opportunity like this in between while applying to school, um, as well as just working in clinical research in general. Um, but I actually met the woman who applied with, sorry, who
That's
offered
so
me this
cool.
position at the career fair at BC, which is another great opportunity that, again, most schools will have. But she called me and she was like, I knew your name looked familiar. Um, and I was like, oh, yes, like I talked to you. I was super interested because just in general, I love Dana-Farber's mission. So I was like,
Mm.
oh, I've always like been interested in like I had read about the Jimmy Fund, like all of those things. Um, and especially as I said, Boston is a really great location to be in if this is the type of work you're looking to do. Um, just biomedical, anything biomedical in general. Boston's a great place to be. There's so many great hospitals, so many great
Mhm.
schools. Yeah, so I thought this was just a quick thing to highlight. And then finally, I just wanted to go through some additional planning advice. Um, it's totally okay to not know what you want to do when you're in high school and in college. I didn't know that I was going to apply to graduate school until I was a senior, and it was like 2 weeks before the deadline, which, as I said, I'm not the best with deadlines, clearly. Um, so it's totally okay to not know what you want to do. I still don't really know what I'm going to do after graduate school. Luckily, I have a few years to figure it out,
Yeah.
um, which is totally fine. I'm happy where I am, and I kind of just plan to take things as they come. Um, I knew kind of what I had an idea. I had an idea of what I maybe wanted to do. Um, I knew that I like science, and I could see myself having a career in it. But um, yeah, it's totally okay to not know. And at most colleges and universities, you'll have a little bit of time to figure that out. I think most schools don't have you formally declare a major. You don't have to until maybe you're a junior or end of sophomore year. Um,
Mhm.
so you have a few years to figure it out. You have a few semesters to take different classes, kind of see what you're interested in, see what works, see what doesn't. At BC, we have a core curriculum. Um, so I was able to get some of those requirements finished in my earlier semesters, which was good. And this is just like a tidbit, I guess. If you have any inclination that you want to go to graduate school, looking into what those course requirements could be, maybe earlier into your college career, just to see if you have to take any classes that maybe you weren't even thinking about or weren't on your radar, just to kind of get a sense of that. And if it doesn't end up working out and that's not what you want to do, that's totally okay, of course. But if it's something you're thinking about and something you feel strongly about, it could be a good way to get some of your electives in while also meeting some requirements that you'll need down the line. Yeah, so that's all. As I said, I'm happy to answer any questions, of course, over email. I'll take any questions if you have any too. But I'm always happy to email. I'm free. Most of the summer I'm pretty free. So, and as well during the school year, I have a really flexible schedule with everything I'm doing. So happy to answer any questions, of course.
Oh, thank you so much
Yes, of
for
course.
today.
Of course.
Yeah, I personally learned so many things.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
Yeah. Okay, let me just do the conclusion and I'm gonna talk to you.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay. So that's a wrap for our first episode of College Chats. Huge thank you to Maggie from Boston College for taking the time to share such valuable advice, personal stories with us. And we hope all of you found it helpful and inspiring. Stay tuned for more episodes and thanks for joining us.